Hey guys, here is a quick video to introduce the confrontation unit in which we attempt to answer the question, do the ends justify the means? So at this point, we are halfway through our four main units for the school year. We have finished invasion, where we answer the question, what drives change? Next was division, which we just wrapped up, about what is worth fighting for. Now we're entering into confrontation. So once a fight has finally broken out, do the ends justify the means? Usually, if we were following a chronological timeline in a social studies course, we would start with colonization and we would talk about what brought people from Columbus all the way through the Pilgrims and the Puritans to settle in North America. Then we would talk about in the early to mid 1700s the road to the Revolution, how the colonies that developed eventually became very frustrated with the British and wanted to break away over the issues of taxes and representation. Then we would talk about the Revolutionary War from 1775 to 1783 and the actual war that the colonists fought against the British Army to gain their independence. After that, once we have an independent United States of America, we would talk about the beginnings of that American government. So in the late 1700s and the very beginning of the 1800s, how did the Americans decide to structure their government in a way that they believed will be better than what they had experienced under the British? Once that government is in place, from 1803 and the Louisiana Purchase all the way through the building of the Transcontinental Railroad, we would look at westward expansion. So what brought people out west in the early to mid 1800s along the Oregon Trail, out to the California Gold Rush, the Mexican-American War. And then after that, we would look at sectionalism. So in the mid 1800s, especially in the 1850s, what drove the North and the South apart from one another, and how did the issue of slavery divide the country? Then, of course, we talk about the Civil War from 1861 to 1865 and the actual conflict between the North and the South over the issue of slavery. And then finally, we would wrap up the year with Reconstruction and looking at how the government of the United States tried to rebuild following the conclusion of the Civil War. But in this class, we look at things a little bit differently. We look through kind of a thematic timeline to try to see how similar events and historical patterns emerge in different time periods. So we began with invasion and we compared the colonization of the 1600s to westward expansion in the 1800s. Next, in division, we looked at what split the British colonists from the British government and how that's very similar to what drove the North and the South to split from one another. Now, in this unit, we're going to focus on confrontation and looking for some similarities between the Revolutionary War and the Civil War. In our plot diagram or our story arc at this point, we've reached the conflict portion of our plot diagram. So we've reached the climax of the story where we're ultimately going to try and resolve the initial issues or conflict dating way back to the road to the Revolution and way back to the beginning of sectionalism, the differences between the North and the South. In this unit, the confrontation unit, we're going to be answering that question, do the ends justify the means? And in our first content bubble, we're going to look at the Revolutionary War from 1775 to 1783. Our second content bubble is going to be about the Civil War from 1861 to 1865. And then our modern connection is going to deal with a drone strike in the country of Yemen, which we'll get to in a little bit. So our learning targets here in this first content bubble are going to be about the Declaration of Independence, battles in the Revolutionary War, a place called Valley Forge, the Battle of Yorktown, and then a peace treaty concluding the Revolutionary War. And in this particular lesson, to kind of set things up for confrontation, we're going to analyze specific moral dilemmas to determine if the ends justify the means. Now that question, maybe you've heard it before, do the ends justify the means? It's important that we understand what these terms mean and what this question is all about because it's going to drive so much of what we do in this unit. So ends are the desired outcome or the goal that you are trying to accomplish in any given circumstance or situation. And the means are the method that you use to achieve that goal. So for example, if my goal, my ends, are to earn a perfect score on a social studies quiz, then my means might be studying for that quiz, working on a study guide, a Quizlet set, whatever it might be. So, do the ends justify the means? That question comes in when we start to think about the methods that you are using to achieve a good goal. So, the question here is really asking, is it acceptable to use morally bad methods in order to accomplish something that's morally good? If I have something good in mind that I'm trying to accomplish, is it okay if I bend the rules or act maybe unethically in order to accomplish that good goal in the long run? So, what you're going to start with here in our introduction lesson is 4 moral dilemmas. One has to do with a group project, one focuses on a sporting event and an opponent's quarterback. Next has to do with a pharmacist and a specific medicine that could save someone's life. And then finally, a lifeboat dilemma, which you may have heard something about before. What you're going to do in each of these circumstances is try to consider, do the ends justify the means? So you're going to read the dilemmas, identify the ends and the means, and then decide, what do you think? Do the ends justify the means?